Hey everybody, it's Jane Johnson with the Bar Hill Group at Remax Camosun. I'm here today with Andrew Plank. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Jane. We're backwards today. Let me see if I can switch us around. Oh, look at
There.
that. There we are.
And we have our guest today, Andrew Nichols of Arbutus Appraisals. Hello. And Andrew's having some renovations done in the background, so he's trying to be behind the scenes. And then we also have Jen Lowe of DLC, that's Dominion Lending Mortgage, Modern Mortgage, right? Okay. So because I expect this is going to be a long show, how about we do the stats first and then we'll get into our discussion.
Sure. And what are we talking about today, Jane?
We are doing a summary of all the market update from May to May 31st, and then we're just going to review at the beginning our last little week here since it's June 6th, and then we're going to discuss the inflation and interest rates and how everything is affecting appraisals and what everybody anticipates happening.
So if anybody has questions for what's going on in the mortgage world, what's going on with appraisals, we've got two wonderful people here who can chime in and give us their take on things. Yay.
Yay.
Okay, so sometimes we're doing end of month stuff. So that might take some time. Do we actually want to sort of...
I think we do, because I think it'll give us a perspective of what's going to be happening. Okay.
I appreciate our guests' patience then.
Well, they can chime in as well as we go along.
All right. Please do, guys.
All right. So welcome everybody. We're doing our June 6th market update with Andrew Nichols, appraisal, and Jen Lowe, mortgage broker extraordinaire. So Karen Denny-Smythe, who's the president and sometimes watcher of our show. Welcome, Karen.
Are you there, Karen?
I don't know. Anyway, she's saying the real estate market in Greater Victoria is returning to a steadier pace. We will see that in the stats. She calls the previous 2 years pretty strange, and that's true because of the pandemic. And while inventory is still lower than normal, it is now within our 5-year average, and the increase in inventory is going to bring buyers more choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So last week, go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, so just in the last week, so we're on the right hand. Are we doing the right hand one then?
Sure.
Yeah. So the right hand column there, month to date market stats. We're only in June 6th, so we don't have a lot of stats yet for the month of June. But so far this month, we've had 111 properties go unconditional, meaning that people have come to firm and binding agreements to purchase. That's compared to, for the full month of June, 942 in 2021. 224 new properties have come listed in the last just under a week, compared to, again, 1,208 for the full month of June. And currently, and this is what Karen Denny-Smythe was referring to in the last slide, we are way up from where we have been on active listings. We're at 1,789 versus 1,375, which was really, really tight last June. So we're moving into more selection. I don't know about you though. I'm working with buyers who are still not finding the selection in their price point though. So
I showed a buyer 4 properties in a row last week.
Oh, good. That's exciting. Super exciting. For anybody watching who's not familiar with it used to be, we could set up 8 showings in a row. If somebody wants to see a bunch of properties, we go and request those showings. There's a good expectation we're going to get 80% of them approved at least. And in the last little while, it's been like, if there's 10 properties to choose from, which there isn't, you might get through 2 of them because the rest of them are already under contract.
Yeah, and actually it's funny because we did go for 8. We saw 4, but
so better odds.
Better odds, and it gives good perspective. So the buyers are, we're going out again today, but the buyers are able to see properties across geography and price range. So that was good. Okay.
Yeah, it's a whittling down process. It's definitely a whittling down process. Seeing what's out there and having more selection to see, even if it's not the property ultimately that you're going to want. You might say, I don't really sure about this. You should still go view it just to get that perspective and see what it eventually sells for. Helps to tune you.
Yeah. Often actually buyers say, I don't want to waste my realtor's time.
Yep.
Because I may not be interested, but actually for us, it's a great opportunity to get into a property, especially with COVID. We're not going to be going and looking at properties unless we have a qualified buyer.
I had a client yesterday say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't want to, sorry you had to come out here for this one that we didn't want to buy kind of thing. Because we got through it and it was obvious it wasn't for them. And he said, this must be really hard for you. And I said, no, this is part of the job I really like. I like to go and see these properties. And if it doesn't work out, it's like, it just tells us more about what you're looking for.
Your feedback.
Really, really helpful. So don't, that's what we're here for. Actually, and this is, I know going down another side road here, but how many times do you get someone who calls you, the listing agent, to say, hey, I want to see this property, but I don't want to bother my agent?
A lot.
Go bother your agent. That's what the buyer's agents are there for.
Oh, I love it when they call me as a listing agent, because now I got your name, your number. You've probably told me your story, even though I'm telling you I'm working for the seller, and I'm working for the seller. And when your agent brings you through and you write a contract, I now have all that information to the seller.
To the buyer. Yeah, to the seller.
To the seller. Okay. Market Watch, 306 new listings, pending 188. This is really important because it shows it's like sitting on a pulse. So now we know listings and sales. So we have a bigger gap than we've had in a long time. And price decreases 111. So that's significant. We were down to about 26 last year. Price increase 1, which we know is probably a typo. Back on market are properties that are having work done. So there are 3 of those. And then sold, it's going to be a big week because it's the 1st of June. Yeah. And 417 listings sold. Usually like the 1st and the 15th are big times. And Jen, do you agree with that?
Yep. Well, the 1st and the 15th, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then 43 properties expired. So again, showing that not everything sells.
Right. So actually, one of my clients is writing on an expired property because they're relisting it today for less price.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Okay. Total active listings. We were at 2,600 2 years ago. We went up to about 2,700 in June of 2020. We dropped down in June of 2021 to 1,400, and now we're back up to 1,800. So looking good.
Yeah. And you can see we're still not, we're not near the May 2020. We haven't, we're past May 2020 here in May 2022, and we're still much lower. So we could raise up again higher, but this curve is a little bit behind the 2020 curve.
Right. And when we got into real estate in 2006, the numbers were 3,400. And just think, relatively speaking, how much fewer houses were available at that time, as well as people here. So proportionately, we're low.
Yep.
Okay. You want to explain this one?
No. Okay. So we've got 2 lines here, 2 different types of information. The bars are the number of listings in that month, or coming on. Yeah, the number of listings in that month. And the sales is a line there following the number of sales going through. So sales tend to flow a little bit behind or lower than the listings. But you can see here we have quite a few lists. Let's go to May 2022, the far right. You can see, almost less than half of the listings are selling in that graph. So less than half the listings, and the sales are going down a little bit. Well, the listings are going up. You can see the 2 curves. The sales curve is going down somewhat, and the listing curve is going up.
Right. So the best time to sell, according to this graph, is in February, because that's when you're more likely to sell a listing than any other time during the year. And you can see that it's
proportional. Yeah.
Quite consistent over time. So we're, again, just under 1,800. These are total new listings. So I think what they're doing is they actually take out the duplicates. the relists.
Now, I want to just, this is a side conversation, but this is something that is worth thinking about. The best time to sell is, February, let's say, every year. And I do talk to my clients and say, let's beat the rush. But don't you also find that prices rise in the spring on average? And so February, they may not have quite hit that rise yet. And then it starts to slow down as sort of the equilibrium hits. Like, what do you think of that as in terms of, let's throw that in the conversation really briefly.
Well, I always say let's sell in February and have a long closing so you have lots of choice in April and May.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. I think
Because
but there is a conversation to be had around strategy if you're looking to buy against something if the prices continue to rise.
yeah,
Right?
I mean, I think it depends on what the trajectory of the market is looking at, and I'm seeing right now that the prices aren't really rising. I mean,
Yeah,
there
now's
are
a good time to sell and then buy.
yeah, and I have clients who just timed it perfectly, and they've gotten ahead of the rate increases, and I have lots of sales coming up of people who've just being really savvy about looking at where rates are going and trying to get ahead of the market and pricing before the rate increases. We'll talk about that. Okay. I love this graph. So this is the sales to active listing ratio. This is that information from the previous graph and showing the proportion. So you can see we're still in the seller's market, but we aren't where we were in February, where we were 120% list to sale ratio. We are now around 50%. And so we're heading steadily into a balanced market.
Yeah, that's a pretty dramatic drop that we're seeing there. That graph is really it's not a cliff, but it's a pretty steep drop as we're going downwards. So I don't see it moving towards balancing out yet. So this will probably continue down.
What was your comment, Jen?
With the last slide, that was my next question. Are we moving towards a balanced market? So
yeah. Yeah, and this just speaks to our perception when we're showing properties of, when you have 8 properties and you can view 7 of them, you're definitely in a balanced market and moving towards buyer. And then everybody gets fat and sassy on the buyer side.
Do you think we're going to hit buyer's market though?
I don't know.
Okay.
We'll see what the interest rates do. Based on what I was reading today, I'm thinking, yeah, but we'll see. Okay. Go ahead.
Going ahead. Okay, so we're talking about the average price for single family homes in all areas here. And this graph runs from May 2020 to May 2022. And we can see that the single family average price reached a peak of around 1.475 last month and has slightly come off of that down to about 1.4. So there is a bit of softening in that average. Averages are a little hard to read because, some really expensive homes could bump the average, but this is a lot of data that we're pulling from when we're talking an average for all areas. So pretty good accuracy here.
Yeah, and I would say if I were to look at this over the long term, that this looks to me like a flat market.
When you look from December 2021, January 2022, actually, it's been pretty flat in terms of the price appreciation for that little while. There's been some bump ups in the past, but we've kind of reached the plateau.
Yeah. So in all the news right now, they're saying, well, we're up 23% over last year and all this stuff. Yes, we are, but it looks like it's flattening out. So I think that's personally a good thing. And maybe even we're heading towards a little bit of a decrease in pricing for listings. We'll see. Anyway, it just speaks to sharpening your pencil when you're talking to your listing agent and making sure that you are pricing so that you hit the market value where buyers think the market's going to go. Previously, you could list and the sale price would go up. Now I'm thinking it's not going to be heading in that direction.
You can lose money by pricing too high. Whereas in the market before, you were insulated from that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so condos, similar pattern. The curve is a little smoother. There's a lot more data on condos actually, because we've got more condo units than single family homes. But we've got this rise up from August 2021 on a slow curve up. Then we reached a peak this January, and it's been sort of a slow, steady, very slow, steady kind of softening, I guess you might say, on the averages. So we went from a peak of about, again, 690,000 down to just over 650,000 on an average condo price in Greater Victoria.
Yeah, so actually this is a great question for Andrew Nichols. I'm just wondering, so when you see this sort of data, Andrew, like where you're seeing a leveling out or maybe even a decrease, so even in row townhouses here, row townhouses we always talk about, there's less examples of them. What do you do in terms of appraisals?
It gets a little tougher, especially in the market for the last 2 years. It was always pretty easy to justify a purchase price because there was always comparable data, but now it gets a little tougher when prices are flat and there's not the higher range of people overpaying a little bit maybe for prices. The comparables gets a little bit tougher. We would do time adjustments too because the market was moving so quickly, and it's harder to justify that now. So sometimes you just don't have as much of a wiggle room to kind of get to the sale price in the appraisal. But yeah, it makes it a little trickier. But I am seeing that prices do seem to be pretty flat right now.
Andrew, can you tell me what you mean by a time adjustment? My understanding is appraisers tend to,
So ideally, you'd want a sale that's, and when there's lots of sales, you can have all your comparable sales in your report, say within the month or 2 months.
Right.
Ideally, they're within 3, and that's kind of what the banks are looking for and lenders. But if we go back further, sometimes you go back a little further to find good comps, especially if there's not a lot of availability. And we'd adjust based on market data. We'd adjust the sale price to reflect that. So say it was 5% adjustment, which we were doing a fair bit. But now if the market's flat, we're not doing that just because the prices don't seem to be increasing quickly.
Right. There's no adjustment to make because it's been flat for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
What I have found too, I recently had a listing where a comparable sold just down the street, and it was a very different property. Mine was 2 levels and had a double car garage, and the other property was 1 level. We were on a bigger lot, but when the appraiser did the appraisal, they referred to the property 2 houses down. And so the appraisal came in $150,000 less than asking. So the buyer had to make a decision about what they were going to do. So what do you do in that case, Andrew Nichols?
Yeah, it's that's where it can get tricky. And now what I would do if I thought, maybe there's not a lot of good comparables in the area, and so you think that the house 2 doors down is going to give you kind of your best value in the comparable of your comparable options. You actually make a construction, and we call it a design and appeal adjustment, but it'd be, it's kind of construction quality, because the 2-story that you were looking to buy, it could cost the cost per square foot could be completely different than the comparable. So we try to adjust for that. So we have a handbook that's updated every quarter, and it gives us kind of rough cost per square foot for average quality, good quality, excellent quality homes, and we try to adjust for all that. And it shows us sort of the difference in cost between different styles of housing, and so we would adjust for that, and then we can see what the land value is, because the land value between the house you want to buy and the comparable sale should be similar, if all things being equal, if they're similar size lots, but the houses are different. You strip away the cost of the home and you have your land value, and then you can adjust for the construction quality difference.
Are corner lots worth more or less?
I'd say it's hard hard to say because so often it's just more the area or the, you know, is there a view? Is it in a quiet cul-de-sac? You know, I don't see it necessarily making a difference, but I'd just say it's the location more than the yeah.
I mean, with a corner lot, you tend not to get truly a backyard, but maybe there's future development potential for some folks with a corner lot, and so you need to look at the whole picture there. I find it so subjective. Andrew mentioned something. I want to pull Jen in on this. When someone does come in, makes their offer on a place, let's say it's $1 million offer on a place, and then the appraisal comes in $125,000 lower. Jen, how is that going to affect
What happens next?
What happens next? Yeah, because that then goes to the lender, right?
Yes. Well, it depends on, well, it always depends on the individual circumstance. So yeah, I mean, hopefully the buyer has a financing condition where they've, you know, can then make the decision if the property is worth it to them to pay that extra $125,000. Depending on where their down payment is coming from and how large their down payment is, it may not have an effect. If they do have a large down payment, if they are scraping together all their pennies to come up with the down payment, they're going to be out of luck because that $125,000 really honestly is needs to be paid in cash.
The bank wants the buyer to make up that difference.
Yes, because the bank lends based on the lower of the appraised value or the purchase price.
Right.
Yeah, and in this case, the buyer actually, it wasn't my buyer, I was the listing agent. The buyer came up with the cash. And it was interesting as well because they had, I guess, purchased a number of properties, and they ended up having to have a commercial loan because of the number of properties they had. So,
I'll just add to that. I've been getting more. I feel like I've been seeing more requests for second opinions on appraisals. So it'll often be a request, and it'll say, you know, we had an appraiser do this, and we're not happy with the value. Can you take another look? And hopefully for them, I come in higher. So I'm getting more of those, and I think that's probably going to be more and more common.
And yeah. Andrew, that's based on the comparables that you choose to potentially use or that you have available at the time that you're doing the appraisal, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also, you know, it's a lot of different, you know, it can just be different appraisers can come in with pretty different values based on how you adjust for where you put the value in your comparables. So there can be huge differences, and even with the same comparables, and how you adjust the comparables to reflect the value of the subject.
Right. I mean, when you look at those comparables, you haven't necessarily been in them. One viewer appraiser may look at one of those houses and say, well, that's a premium construction house, whereas another might say, no, that's more of a standard or substandard house. And you'd use different numbers even for the same property.
100%. Yeah. Like say up in Bear Mountain where there's a huge range. If you sort of treated all houses equal, you could come up with a pretty different number than if you adjusted for construction quality.
Yeah. And I've been inside of those where, and it's, I mean, it's always reinforced when I take clients through homes and they've gone and made a decision to view a home based on the photos. And then we go through it and you can just see the quality of the construction, the quality of the finish. Everything is just subpar. And yet on paper, great floor plan, good looking home. And you get there and you're like, this is not a well-built property. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, that's really why you want to work with a good agent, because an agent is looking at properties and saying, I don't feel like this is good value, or I feel like this is great value, you know. And sometimes a buyer, especially when they're new to the market, they don't know what they're looking at. So we're offering them the perspective of the view over time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
We're, you know, to use the Jen wanted me to talk about turtles, but we're soaking in the market. Like we're in the water. We're in the market. We're in the pot. that's boiling. We are feeling the heat, or whatever. Trying to find a way to add this in here, but
That was so funny.
Okay, let's go to the next slide.
But
If you want to know about this, look at one of our previous shows and you can see what she's talking about. Okay, we're nearly at the end here, folks. Oh, you know what? I added highlights and now they're gone. So we're going to be looking at
highlight reel.
We're going to be looking at the first column, May 22 benchmark price, the percentage change from last month, and the percentage change from last year. So the first column and the last two columns. Because I just want to look at where we are compared to last month and where we are compared to last year.
I see. Okay,
I'll go first. So single family homes, this is over Greater Victoria. So this includes the islands. The benchmark price, 1.294,600. And that's up from last month of 1.5%. Now, just understand that these are sales that they're looking at. And then percentage change from last year is 27.3%. And I just want to say one thing again, is the home price index is based on an ideal home. And so it's not based on real homes. It's like, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a double car garage. Okay, for the core.
For the core, the benchmark price, May 2022, 1,446,400. That's up 1.5% over last month. So same rate up. It's lower rate up than the actual Greater Victoria, which is interesting. I find the core tends to go up faster than the average. This case is showing differently, 23.8% up from last year. Still a stellar increase in values, though.
Right. And then actually, I noticed over the past year, there's been a lot more sales on the islands. And I know Andrew Nichols works around there and he's been traveling a lot to different islands. So would you agree with that, Andrew Nichols? Anne?
Yeah, I would definitely, I would agree with that. There was a lot going on in the last 2 years in the Gulf Islands.
Yeah. Big changeover.
Yeah.
Okay. West Shore. So if you're looking for a deal, you want to look in the West Shore because the benchmark price was 1,153,000. That's only up 0.4% over last month. And it's up 34.8% over last year, but still less than the core and the peninsula.
So I just want to step back to that West Shore comment because it's interesting. It only went up. It went up last month than it has on average, but on average, it's gone up more over the last year than the other areas. It's still lower price points for quite often newer and better quality. Well, for newer homes in some areas of the West Shore. So the values are there, but it's bumped up much more over the last year than the other areas. At 34.8%. The peninsula also has had a pretty good bump. So that's averaging 1.359,200, 1,359,200. That's up 2.4% over last month. So there's been a bit of a jump there compared to the other ones. It's up 27.8% over last year.
Yeah, and I think there's been an increase in popularity. I noticed a lot of development in Sydney and North Saanich.
I think the peninsula is great value for folks and really nice lifestyle for a lot of the different areas there.
Didn't you grow up there?
No, I did not.
Okay. Condo in Greater Victoria, $622,500. That's up 0.6% from last month and up 27.1% from last year. So big increase there in Greater Victoria.
Condos have been hot, and we've been talking about this for a while, that they were catching up. I think they've kind of caught up now. We even saw that there's been some price lowering when we were looking at our averages on a few slides back. So in the core, 633,800, 0.6% change over last month, and 27.9% over last year.
And again, more. Go ahead.
Sorry, Jane. Isn't it true, or correct me if I'm wrong, that the condo market is kind of the last market to be affected by changes in the market?
If you look, the way I describe it to people is you can look at it geographically or you can look at it price-wise. And people are coming into condos, and then as the market bumps up, it bumps up as people transition. So sometimes when the market's heating up, it's going to go from the bottom up as people sell their condo, they move into maybe a townhouse and then a home, but also geographically as they are in the core, and then it'll start to compress from the outside in and also from the top down. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, concentric rings. You know, the core areas, the most popular areas, tend to increase in value most quickly and first, and then it sort of spills out to the more outlying areas. But in terms of condos, I think that's a little bit more nuanced and harder to say, because when we have a big building boom, we end up with a lot of condo inventory, versus when I think we were a little bit behind on inventory. Now we've got a lot of condos building. So it's hard to sort of say with a big brush to say this is exactly what happens here. But what we had was COVID caused a lot of people to get feeling like they were surrounded by four walls and a tight little space and wanted to get the heck out of there. And there was a move from the core, from the small units to larger. And I think that put a lot more pressure on the housing and townhouses and took it off of the condos. But I think we're finding that it's coming back now, especially with affordability so eroded. People are starting, and we have some questions, I think, for you guys around that as well. But with affordability so eroded, people are starting to rethink condos. And they're allowed out of their houses now, and they're allowed to restaurants and to go and to clubs and stuff. And so they're not feeling so confined anymore. So I think the condos are making a comeback.
And also, if you look at the official community plan of where all the development is happening, it's happening in the West Shore, and they're looking at creating affordable housing through many, many condos in the West Shore. So the density is increasing there where it wasn't before. Yeah. So, and then when you have your choice of condos to buy, obviously, you're going to see less pressure on pricing. But that being said, many are pre-selling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just hop on to condos in the West Shore. Actually, 539,300 last month. That's up 1.1% from last month and up 23.1%. So it is in line with everything else. But at the beginning of COVID, Andrew and I talked, I guess it was about 6 months in, about how we felt condos were behind, and they definitely were. Okay. Peninsula?
664,000 for a condo on the peninsula. I mean, you're pretty much talking about condos in Sydney. There's a few condo buildings in Brentwood Bay. There's a few developments scattered around, but mostly we're probably talking Sydney. That's where you're going to find most of the condos these days. And there's been some nice new construction. 664,000 is the benchmark price. That's 0.6% change over last month, 24.2 over last year.
Okay, and then row townhouses, this is always an anomaly because, well, first of all, I just want to say Peninsula condos, some of them have views because it's very flat there. So that's why I think condos are priced high there myself, and are going up in price because they're now building higher, I think 7 stories in some cases. So we're getting more view condos up in that area.
Are you able to build 7 stories frame now? I thought 6 was the max.
Might be 6.
Okay, but anyway.
Okay, row townhouses in Greater Victoria, 833. This is up 3.9% from last month and up 27% year over year. And then in the core, I'll do that one, 891, up 3.1% from last month and up 23.1% from last year. Go ahead.
So now we've got, I think the biggest boom here was the West Shore townhouses have really had a rise. Their average, or their benchmark is 780,500. They're up 6.9% over last month. They're up 35.3% over last year. That's the most outstanding figure that I think we've talked about. And it's true. I think what we're finding out in the West Shore is people have found that even houses have gotten, we talked about the value of houses out in the West Shore, but it's still much more expensive than it was last year. And it's driving people to reconsider townhouses, I think, as well as an alternative. And it's put a lot of heat on that. Now on the peninsula, we've got a benchmark of 811,100,000. It's actually gone down 0.5% over last month, still up 20.2% over last year.
So I just want to say something. I think the West Shore townhomes have gone up in price because of the ones at Royal Bay, which are new construction.
Hmm.
And
Andrew was nodding there.
yeah, and some of them are high end, and then the ones in the peninsula tend to be one level seniors townhouses with 55 plus. I know, I've been showing them.
Yeah, I was out there yesterday. Jen and Andrew, do you have any comments on anything that we've just gone through? Anything sort of come up for you while we were reviewing that?
Just one thing I'll add for the West Shore townhouse. It's Royal Bay, and I'd say Bear Mountain as well, because those all have views. So they're selling for a premium, as well as the Royal Bay, which everything in there is so pricey now.
It really is. And you're buying the vision there, I'd say. I mean, they still haven't
100%.
developed that Royal Bay village yet, but the vision for that village is beautiful and looks really exciting.
When they get to it.
When
Okay.
they get to it.
Let's just talk. So inflation, we're just going to move on here. Inflation is the rate of increase in prices over a given time. It's typically a broad measure, such as overall increases in prices or the increase of the cost of living in a country. And in an expanding economy, which we have, unemployment drops. As we all know, everyone is having wage issue or employment issues, trying to find people, and wages are rising. And they can increase due to increases in production costs, such as raw materials and wages. And I will say that, we've had, what do they call it? Oh my God, supply chain. The supply chain has been lacking. And so that also has increased, I think, production costs.
And for inconvenience. And if you want something fast, you're not going to get it with the supply chains broken, and we have to, where people are doing without and waiting longer and having to pay more.
And I know, like, if the cost of living, the price of gas is probably definitely caused inflation.
Yeah. Sorry, the supply chain thing has been interesting watching used cars, right? Where you can sell a used car now. I see people in one of the electric vehicle groups on Facebook selling their used vehicles. They order a new one. Just before it gets delivered, they sell their old one for almost the price of the new one because it's so hard to get them. And if you want to buy a new one, you have to wait a year or two to get it. So people are paying a big premium for used vehicles, and that's part of the supply chain issue.
Let me know if you want a truck.
Okay.
Well, I bought a new vehicle, and I'm turning my lease in, getting a ridiculous amount of money back for my lease. And the vehicle I bought, I didn't even drive it because you can't, because there's no vehicles to drive. Brand new.
Oh, you didn't test drive it. You just bought it.
I sat in one that belonged to the manager, and
right.
It's crazy. I thought I can't believe I did that. But anyways, I'm quite excited. I'm getting a Ford Bronco. So
cool. So your experience was kind of like buying a house in the last few months.
Yes, exactly. Well, and I was going to chime in from a real estate standpoint. It is interesting. I mean, our immigration is booming hugely, and we have such a supply issue. But it is, the supply issue goes towards more like your fridges, your cars, your appliances, furniture, all that kind of stuff. It is interesting how real estate is lumped into that as well.
Well, if you're talking new construction, you want to build a new home, and you need to get that fridge, and you need to get that lumber, and you need to get all the various bits and pieces, plus find the labor when nobody seems to, when there's a labor shortage. It tells you that it's going to be, that home values are going to have to go up because there's nothing available. So that's where I kind of feel like it's impossible to predict the future, but it feels like with immigration still coming in, net influx into the province is greater than the people going out. And we have really, really low rental vacancy rates. People will be looking for other alternatives, and that includes buying. I don't see the demand going down for purchase. I can see prices softening a little bit as people as their affordability wanes. But I don't see the demand lowering.
Well, and I was reading something, so going like to the Bank of Canada, the rate increase, this is a great slide, but I was watching a webinar yesterday, and the comment was that the Bank of Canada, their goal is to basically freak us all out so that we freeze up and we stop buying.
Yep.
And that's going to fix the supply chain issue, which it's not. That, in my opinion, that's not going to fix the supply chain issue, because everybody needs a place to live, and
What do you think, Andrew Nichols?
Yeah, I think it's. I think at most we're just going to see a flatlining of prices for a while, because the demand is here. Everyone wants to live here.
Yeah.
It's a nice spot. We still have, the affordability is going to maybe put a dent in it, but there's still going to be more people who want to move here than leave. So yeah, there's always going to be some demand.
You know what, Jen? You know what I would do if I were a mortgage broker right now? I'm going to mute Andrew. I would take that screenshot and send it to every realtor every month. Because
this
we're
one
often, yeah, because we're often asked, what's the difference in payments per month now compared to a month ago or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I can, happy to send it to whoever would like it. Well, and the second piece to this, so in looking at, what the difference is based on 500, 750 and $1 million for your mortgage amount. And when you compare, $121 a month, that sucks. But the reality is, people are capable. Most people are capable of paying that. They don't want to, but they are capable of making that increased payment. Prior to the pandemic, we were in an increasing rate environment, and so the stress test was brought into play to protect everyone from, when rates increase, you're not going to be able to afford, you're not going to want to pay the increased payments, but you will be able to afford to continue to make your mortgage payment.
That stress test was kind of put in there in anticipation of exactly this happening.
Yes, it just is happening 3 years after it was supposed to.
Right.
Due to the pandemic,
It's interesting what you said about the shock to the system. The intention of that is to just really have everybody put the brakes on and say, oh my God, what's going on here? Throwing that turtle in the boiling water instead of the water.
Yes.
Right? Panic.
Yes.
Get me out of here. Get me out of here.
Yeah.
I've always felt like, though, like when you add this, let's say on the $1 million home, bump, 50 basis points, and you're now paying an extra $243 a month, and you say, well, most people can afford that, or we can kind of buffer in that. We can hold that. It does affect our affordability, but on top of that, we also have what we were just referring to. When you buy a new fridge, you're going to be paying more for it. You buy that used car, or an even new car.
Gas.
The cost of gas is up, and the cost of food is up. So when you kind of pile those on top, that's where you start to find that people are starting to look and say, well, what is, how do I tighten my belt, and where do I tighten my belt, and what are my options? I just don't see it as, I don't see selling your home and getting out of real estate as an option when the rental market is so high.
Well, some people, it depends on their thought processes, but I was going to ask, like, when some people obviously signed in for a fixed rate mortgage over time, how many people signed in for fixed rate over the past 2 years compared to variable rate in your experience? And are you finding, Andrew Nichols, that people are doing refinancing for like HELOCs and stuff like that? Home equity line of credits?
Lots of refinance. That's the majority of work we do, is definitely refinancing, and I think that's a definitely a big part. Everyone's just worried and trying to figure out what to do, and locking in anything at this point, I guess. And we're definitely doing, we definitely do HELOCs as well. We don't often get a lot of context as for why people are doing it, but you can kind of see shifts, and there's more refinancing right now, I would say.
What are you financing? What are you finding, Jen?
Well, I mean, with lots of fear, lots of client, like I do, majority is variable rate, and I recommend going with a variable rate. There's definitely been a shift from, there's two types of, we refer to a variable rate mortgage, but there's an adjustable rate, and then there's a variable rate. And the variable rate, your payment does not change over the mortgage. So the advantage to that is that, in increasing rate environment, you don't have to worry about your payment going up. What does change is the lifetime of the mortgage.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So depending on what your goal is, if your goal is to have that static payment to know what your cost is, pay less interest, take the variable rate mortgage. What I wouldn't recommend doing would be to lock in your mortgage, because now what you're doing is you're paying an extra 2% on average to the bank. There's other ways that you can, by changing to biweekly payment, by putting additional lump sum payment to the principal of your mortgage, you're far better off than to lock in and just pay the bank more money to have that security and peace of mind.
Yeah. I do have somebody who they locked in for 10 years. And I'm like, that is a long time. That's like commitment to that house. And they're in a fixed rate. And so I think you did the financing for them. So I just wonder, like, over time, what if something happens and they have to change their situation? They're going to have a big penalty.
And that's the other big reason why not locking in. You don't realize until it's too late and you want out of your mortgage what the cost of doing so is. It's huge, thousands of dollars difference going with a fixed rate versus a variable rate. And I'm speaking for myself personally. I've bought my forever home 4 or 5 times. Right? I'm not moving. I'm going to stay here. We love it. It's going to grow with us. And then your kids become teenagers and you don't want them right next to you anymore. Right? So, you don't know what the next 5 years is going to bring. And by locking into a fixed rate, you're guaranteeing yourself a substantial penalty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Andrew, Andrew Nichols, do you want to add any comments to that? Are you finding, like, are people, when they're refinancing, are they refinancing to sort of give themselves a bit of a buffer on the, I'm just thinking, like, line of credit, so that they can, if there's an emergency, they can access that? Why are they
again, we often don't get the context for it, but sometimes we do, and actually a lot of them, for me anyways, lately have been renovations.
Oh,
so
like purchase plus improvements type thing.
There's that, and then just people who are borrowing against the equity in their home to do renovations for places they already own. But I have done a lot recently too for purchasing to redo, to rebuild the house entirely, or entirely renovate it. So then they're borrowing, the money to build and to buy. What's that? Yeah.
Putting in a rental suite.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Best move we ever did was put in a rental suite. Just takes the pressure off.
You can often lower your monthly payments by taking equity out of your home and building that suite into it, and then getting the income from it, and it's going to be paying more off your mortgage than you were before, and you've increased the value of your home. So it can be a really smart move to
Yeah,
consider doing that.
I had a client who's a builder asked me one point. She said, "Okay, well, I have two choices. One is I could take the equity now that my house has increased in value, and I could buy another property, or I could renovate my home and add a suite." I'm like, "Well, renovate the home, you have a suite, then you have more equity, and then you can buy the other property." Yeah.
Good point. And, I always suggest to my clients that, when they're looking for their first home, not necessarily for their forever home, but their primary home, let's put it that way, that they should be a little less concerned about, getting the best deal, the best value, hitting all the marks, but make it the home that you want to live in. Like, make it a home that buy the home you're happy with, and don't worry so much about it's when you're buying the investment home, that's where you're going to be taking out the pencil and going really sharp.
Yeah.
But, if you get really sharp and you miss out on a wonderful home in a great neighborhood that gives you the lifestyle you're looking for because you're trying to save $10,000 by commuting to Langford, that just makes no long-term sense. So you got to, I think, put in that subjective value as well.
One thing I'll add with the market, actually with the rental suite, is that and Jen would probably be able to speak to that too, but we'll often get requests added to the appraisal to do a market rent estimate, so you can potentially borrow more as well. So depending on what your plans are, what you're wanting to do, you can borrow more against the house, and that can also help you hit the value to buy a house if there's a rental suite in it.
Yes.
Yeah, and especially if you have a rental right now that's below market value, right?
As most people do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're nearly out of time, so I thought maybe we could ask everybody to tell us how do they get in touch with you. So let's start with Andrew Nichols.
Yeah, you can give me a call or email me. Andrew at arbutusappraisals.ca. And my phone number is 778-440-4418. And yeah, let me know. Happy to help.
Okay, and if you want more information or you like this sort of interactive, please give us an email, send us an email. How do they get in touch with you, Andrew Plank?
Andrew Plank, they can reach they can call or text me at 250-360-6106. Email me info@andrewplank.com. And again, come to my website, check it out. Lots of information there, andrewplank.com.
Okay, and Jen?
Yeah, I can be reached at 250-217-4925 or j.lowe@dominionlending.ca, or check out my website at jenlowe.ca.
Yeah, and my name is Jane Johnston. I'm with the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun. You can reach me at 250-744-0775. You can find these videos at vancouverislandtime.com, or if you want to buy or sell, please visit briarhillgroup.com. And don't forget, every Monday we are on at 10 o'clock in the morning, and we would really love it if you want to subscribe. So, and I'm trying to find my banner to hide it. There we go. So please don't forget to subscribe and tell us that you love us, and tell us what you want to hear.
We all want to be loved. Just tell us you love us. That's great. That's all you need to send us. It's just little sweet messages.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. We love you all. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Yes,
and
love.
Yeah. If you, as I said, if you want to play the real estate game, it's all about information. So please do your research with us, check in with us regularly, and we'll see you next week, Monday at 10 a.m. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.